So, I'm not gonna lie, I don't love holiday movies. Or actually, let me be more specific. I'm not the kind of person who enjoys the Hallmark brand of Christmas movie where it's like earnest white people in alternating red and green sweaters learning the value of family by building an unconventional gingerbread house. That is for some people. It's not for me. And around this time of year, that kind of movie gets a lot of airtime and attention, so I decided to start a personal project that would serve as counter-programming for other pre-Ghost Scrooges like me, who would rather, not.
Be off with you!
Welcome to the first installment of 25 Days of Actress. Each week in December, I'll be releasing a list of films that I think features a great performance by a great actress. 25 films in total, or one for every day leading up to the 25th. Think of this as my version of Vlogmas, or for those of you similarly versed and haunted by Catholic school parlance, my version of an advent calendar. Now, some of you might not have seen any of these movies, some of you might have seen all of them. For the former, I hope this inspires new entries on your watch list. For the latter, I hope you find this a good opportunity to rediscover some old favorites or to just share in my fandom with me. We're going to be talking noir, comedy, melodrama, sci-fi, musicals, action, one that I'm going to count as a Western. I'll give you just a little bit of context for the films, talk a bit about why I liked the performances, and warn you about anything that might be good to know going in should you choose to watch any for the first time. To be clear, these aren't in any particular order. This isn't a list of my personal 25 favorite performances of all time, but they are performances that I've been wanting to talk about and wasn't sure when I'd be able to, so I'm just gonna do it now. The criteria I used to make this list might give you a good idea of what you're in store for, so here's how I picked. Nothing too depressing. It's been a year, so as much as I want to talk about Autumn Sonata or Fear of Fear or whatever, at this moment in time, I'd rather keep things relatively light. Nothing before the year 2000. My goal on this channel is to keep film history alive, so I'm not so much interested in reminding you that Olivia Colman was good in The Favorite. We know, we were there. Nothing too inaccessible. I'm not going to try to wow you with super deep cuts that you can't find anywhere or that only exist on one obscure streaming service. Everything will be either linked for free on YouTube, streaming on popular platforms, or available to rent for less than $3. And that info will always be in the description. No Best Actress winning films. We do enough of that here. And finally, this isn't so much a guideline, but it should be said that this list is also informed and limited by my personal knowledge of film. There are international films on this list, but it is primarily populated by American films. For those of you who are like, this is not what I subscribe to this channel for, I get it. Do your thing, and don't worry, you will still get a normal video this month. But also, let me have some fun here. I love in-depth video essays as much as anyone, but your girl needs a break to talk about movies like a normal person every once in a while, so I hope this is still fun for you, just a lighthearted end to a year that has been very, very difficult by almost every measure. So without further ado, I present days 1 through 5 of the 25 Days of Actress. 1956's Written on the Wind tells the story of a young woman named Lucy, played by Lauren Bacall, who marries into a Texan oil family. Her new husband, Kyle, suffers from alcoholism, and her new sister-in-law, Mary Lee, Dorothy Malone, is considered the town tramp. Kyle's best friend and co-worker, Mitch, takes care of them all, except he's also in love with Lucy, and Mary Lee is in love with him. On paper, it sounds maybe too soap operatic to be any good, but in the hands of director Douglas Sirk, that couldn't be farther from the truth. Douglas Sirk was a German director primarily known for his use of vibrant colors, lush landscapes, domestic themes, and more than anything, melodrama. But even if you've never seen a Douglas Sirk movie in your life, you will pick up on that in the first 10 seconds of this film. It might seem excessive at first, but that's kind of the point, to marry one family's spoiled, selfish decadence with the obviously fake, glossy aesthetics of Hollywood. Dorothy Malone's performance embodies that excess. She enters the film at about the half-hour mark. She's wearing a bright pink outfit over a maybe too dark tan, slouched over in a booth, drinking and flirting. She plays Mary Lee like a fox. She slinks and sneaks, and at times appearing cuddly and domesticated, and at other times predatory and wild, showing us that Mary Lee's reckless behavior isn't just an unhinged desire for thrills, but a childish way to lash out. Mary Lee knows what will hurt and annoy, and even though she isn't unredeemable, she will absolutely do those things if she thinks she has to. Written on the Wind brought new life to Dorothy Malone's career. It even won her the Best Supporting Actress Oscar, which, haha, does not violate my rule. She first came to Hollywood in the early 1940s, playing small roles like this hot nerd in The Big Sleep, and in the early 50s starred in primarily B-movies, remakes of better films, forgettable westerns, and even once as the lover of
Ronald Reagan.
Some scenes to look out for: a lengthy face journey that I laugh at way more than I should, and without spoiling anything, there's a scene involving some stairs that has some brilliant editing that had my jaw on the floor the first time I saw it. You'll know exactly what I mean if you've seen it, and you will know what I mean when you watch it. From director Satyajit Ray, The Big City documents how one family adjusts to make ends meet. Arati takes a job as a saleswoman, though her husband and his parents are somewhat uncomfortable with her leaving her role in the home. She quickly becomes the company's top salesperson and begins to taste the more permissive lifestyle led by women in less traditional households. The Big City was the first film in which Madhabi Mukherjee played the lead. None of the others had a lead actress, only lead actors, and the first of 3 collaborations with Rai. The following year, the two came together again to film Charulata, about a lonely woman whose husband pays her so little attention that she seeks the company of his cousin instead. Where Charulata sees Mukherjee almost exclusively in the home, The Big City forces her into the modern world through economic necessity. This movie gives you a lot to unpack: the Anglo-Indian influence, gender and generational dynamics, and even that something as simple as a tube of lipstick can challenge domestic bliss and shift a person's concept of their identity. Mukherjee's composure is key here. Arati is calm and measured, and as she slowly opens herself up to society, she must weigh her own excitement with her family's reticence, nervously guarding one life from the other, but sincerely relishing in both. The portrait she and Rai paint feels like a real woman, not at all one-dimensional, carrying stress and love and happiness and worry in tandem while catering to the concerns of others. The movie works only because she makes us care for, root for, sympathize with Arati. As Roger Ebert wrote of her in this movie, she's a beautiful, deep, wonderful actress who simply surpasses all ordinary standards of judgment. And if that's not a ringing endorsement, I don't know what is. To be honest, it was difficult to choose between this and Charulata, so if that sounds more interesting to you, do it. Both run about 2 hours long, and you can't really go wrong either way. Written, directed, and starring Elaine May, A New Leaf follows a totally self-absorbed man named Henry Graham. Newly bankrupt, but desperate to maintain his life of luxury, he decides to find a rich, single woman, marry her, and kill her for her money. He finds an awkward botanist who meets his criteria and seeks to execute his plan by executing her. Because A New Leaf is kind of Elaine May's baby, there are many pathways to appreciating her work here. Perfectly placed shots to capture visual gags, hilariously written back and forths, and her own performance as a naturally clumsy, naive young woman who can't quite hold a teacup. I don't think one would normally call Elaine May a physical comedian, but A New Leaf gives her many excellent physical bits. There's one where she tries to figure out how to put on a one-sleeve dress for like 5 minutes, and I have no idea why it makes me laugh so hard, but it does. For Henrietta, Elaine uses trust as a weakness and a strength. She trusts Henry enough to fall for his scheme, but also enough to surprise and encourage him. As her goodness clashes with his maliciousness, it becomes a masterclass. 2 master comic actors just riffing off of each other. Prior to A New Leaf, Elaine cut her teeth as an improvisational and sketch comedian, famously as one half of Nichols and May. She then transitioned into writing and acting in films, and by directing A New Leaf, she became the first woman to direct a film for a major American studio since Ida Lupino. But the process was absolutely not easy. She was grossly underpaid for her work and went wildly over budget and schedule. And then the studio took control of the editing process. They eliminated a significant chunk of the film and changed the ending entirely. Apparently, Henry originally committed many more murders. She sued the studio, but the judge denied her right to injunction, and Paramount released their version to critical acclaim. So I know the one we're seeing isn't the one Elaine May wanted us to see. But even in this form, I think her genius speaks for itself, and A New Leaf is worth the watch, especially if you prefer dark humor. Made just 2 years before Written on the Wind, Salt of the Earth could not be more different. Based on a real strike against the Empire Zinc Company and co-financed by the International Union of Mine, Mill, and Smelter Workers, Salt of the Earth chronicles the measures taken by Mexican-American miners to demand wages and working conditions equal to their white counterparts. Told from the perspective of one of the miners' wives, Esperanza, played by Rosaura Revueltas, it details how the wives organized to become a vital part of the strike's success. Esperanza's arc traces her journey from hesitancy, joining a movement never meant to include her, to simple participation, asking for the right to vote, to outright defiance, declaring her worth and power through solidarity with the other women. A majority of the cast is played by non-actors, so Rosaura's performance does a lot of the emotional heavy lifting, and she's more than up to the task. The actress had already found success in Mexico throughout the early 50s, and given the disruptions she experienced during the filming of this movie, it's all the more impressive that she achieves such a sensitive performance. Because I don't know if you noticed that with layered critiques of sexism, racism, and corporations, this film was pretty progressive, and in 1954, that was a big no-no. To make matters worse, it was directed by Herbert Biberman, written by Michael Wilson, and produced by Paul Jericho. And if you recognize those names, you probably also know that all three of them were accused of being communists by the House Un-American Activities Committee and blacklisted from working in mainstream Hollywood. And Biberman actually served time for refusing to cooperate with Congress. The three began working on this film during their banishment. Knowing the film's subject matter and the reputation of the filmmakers, the town they were shooting in started fights with the crew, no one would make prints of the film or distribute it, and Congress and the FBI got involved. Then, all of a sudden, in the middle of filming, Rosaura was arrested for a trumped-up illegal immigration charge and deported. The filmmakers had to use a double for the rest of the movie. This incident sabotaged her career in Mexico too, and she didn't make another film until 1975. This is a pretty shameful moment in film and generally American history, and a good example of how women of color can see some of the most severe consequences for absolutely no reason. But still, I'm thankful that this performance was captured and that we have such a potent example of her talent. Switching tones completely, here we have 1936's Libel Lady, which by the way was recently added to HBO Max, and as a result I've seen it appear on my timeline more and more, which is absolutely thrilling because I have really wanted more eyeballs on this wonderful screwball comedy. Myrna Loy plays a wealthy socialite who sues a newspaper for calling her a homewrecker. The paper's editor, Spencer Tracy, recruits William Powell to set a trap for her. The plan is to woo her and then have a fake wife catch them in the act. So that way, in a sense, she would be having an affair and technically couldn't sue him for lying. Libel Lady, like pretty much anything they started together, gets a lot out of William Powell and Myrna Loy's chemistry, which is pretty much perfect. Of course, the best example of their dynamic would be the Thin Man, but I like Libel Lady because unlike the Thin Man, where their characters are already married, here they have to go through the process of falling in love. So the script works really hard to excavate the things that make them gel. And generally speaking, Myrna Loy's best jokes occur when she's outsmarting someone or when she's tired of something. And William Powell usually plays the smartest person in the room, so he supports her by meeting her on her level and making her laugh, and her warmth supports him by motivating him to wield his intelligence for good. Where Myrna Loy brings her deadpan loveliness, Jean Harlow injects energy. She's much more emotional, outgoing, and persistent. It's a kind of brash comedy that balances out the film's sentimentality. And although William Powell and Myrna Loy get a lot of attention for their legendary chemistry, don't overlook how he interacts with Jean Harlow. They were in a relationship during filming and were up until her death in 1937, and maybe it's just me reading into it, but you can kind of tell. Their back and forth is just as playful and magnetic, and it's just as fun to see her eyes light up as she falls for him. Overall, this is a fantastic underseen ensemble piece that would definitely bring some cheer to your day should you decide to watch it. Those are my performances for today. Be sure to turn on notifications so you can be alerted when I publish the next one. Let me know what you thought of these performances if you've seen the movies, and if you haven't, let me know if you're interested in seeing them now.